In the last 20 years, the world has gotten more complicated when it comes to figuring out how and what to pay executives in the not-for-profit world. Where do you turn and where do you get the data? So when determining what to pay executives, there are two elements organizations need to be aware of. First of all is IRS rules and regulations related to intermediate sanctions. If you don't pay your executives fair market value, you run the risk of significant fines as well as potentially losing your not-for-profit status. On the other side, more organizations are finding that their sources of talent are also in the for-profit world, which adds to the complexity of the types and levels of compensation being offered to their executives. Finally, technology and social media has increased the ease of access to operational and financial information for most organizations. This makes being aware of and sensitive to the feedback and the perspectives of donors as well as the media critical when setting compensation designs and levels. So when setting compensation levels for your executives, there are generally two sources of data that most organizations would access. The first is IRS Forms 990. These forms, in addition to financial information for the organization, also provide detailed information on the compensation for their executive team. The second source of data is published survey information. As an organization, for example, we have access to a dozen or more compensation surveys that we utilize in helping our clients determine what's the appropriate level of compensation for their management and executive team. When documenting competitive market data for IRS intermediate sanction rules and regulations, organizations must meet the rules related to rebuttable presumption. What that means is there are three elements that they have to meet in order to presume that the compensation is reasonable. First, they have to make these decisions in advance. Second, when making that decision, they must rely on and obtain data from an independent source, typically a compensation consultant. And third, they should document how these decisions were made. Finally, what makes it even more complicated, and in some regards easier for not-for-profit organizations, is the IRS allows not-for-profits to also look at for-profit information when they're determining whether their pay is reasonable. So it provides more latitude for them and more room to make these decisions and more room for compensation levels. So from an executive compensation point of view for not-for-profits, on this side of the street, it's critical to make sure that you meet the rules and regulations related to IRS intermediate sanction rules. On the other side is making sure that you have the plans and programs in place to attract and retain the highest quality talent.